Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the writing department specific info session with esteemed writing chair, Zay Amsbury. Applause all around. Zay, you want to give a wave? You want to say hello?
Hello. I'm Zay. I'm the chair of the writing department. I was a student at CSSSA in before times. I was a 3-year student in the writing department. Um, and then I taught in the faculty for about 10 years. And then I was the chair of the department for a couple of years. And then I took a long time off. And then last year I came back, and it was a wonderful experience teaching this new generation of CSSSA students.
We're so happy to have you back, Zay, especially since you have such a unique experience of being a student in the program, being educated through the program, and coming back, giving back of all of your wisdom and imparting it upon this next generation of artists and writers. So thank you. And thank you all for joining us. So we're going to take you through kind of the nuts and bolts. What is the writing department? What can you expect? Then we'll go through the application. I'll let Zay talk a little bit more in depth about maybe what he's looking for, little tips and tricks. And then if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. After we're done with our little slide presentation, we will answer them. And you can put those in the chat, or you can unmute and ask your question in real time. No pressure. So without further ado, let's get this train a-rolling. So in the writing program, you're going to be exposed to all different styles of writing. Students explore prose, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and dramatic writing. Students will go deep in a particular genre of their choosing, including poetry, drama, fiction, and nonfiction. Students work together in group projects, group collaboration. You're working with basically everyone in your department. And the CSSSA Writing Anthology is a collection of student work that lives on. It's a really incredible anthology that is printed, and you can take it home and commemorate your experience at CSSSA. Say anything you would like to add.
Sure. Well, I'm sitting here smiling because I'm seeing photos of students from last year, which is quite awesome. I haven't actually seen that photo, but I remember all of those students vividly. So all students explore classes so the way the program has been structured in the past, and one thing I'm very into is change and growth and reacting to how things happened last summer. So we may retain the structure, we may not, but last year the structure was in the morning, you would have an introductory class in a particular domain of writing: prose, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and dramatic writing. Those classes would last about a week. So you get a week-long introductory class in one of those domains. In the afternoon, you'd have an elective. Um, each one of the writing instructors taught an elective. That's an elective you would choose. There's a presentation of what the electives will be on the first day, and you will choose them. And almost every year, every student gets at least their second choice. Almost everyone gets their first choice. Um, those electives tend to be deeper and richer than just, hey, poetry, but more so. Usually there's some sort of theme that reflects the interests and expertise of the instructor. So for example, my elective was called Breaking the Container, and it was about writing plays or movies or novels that broke the normal way of telling stories. So instead of like beginning, middle, and end, you would do things in a non-linear fashion. Instead of having one protagonist, you'd have multiple protagonists, or you'd use weird structures. It was basically about writing weird stuff from a very different direction than other ways. But there were also electives in much more traditional short story writing, electives in very, very personal, very raw poetry, an elective in much more formal, sort of erudite poetry. So there's always a lot of different ways in, based on both your personal interests and also who you vibe with. You know, there are 6 or 7 instructors. They're all very, very, very different people. And who you vibe with is who you vibe with. Um, every week there is a group session or a day of group sessions where writers will do work together. One of the things about writers is that we can get stuck in our head, and our primary relationship can be with a pen or a pencil or a laptop or the characters in our head. Um, and it's important to find a way to the page through collaboration, and getting to know your fellow writers. We get very close in the writing department, and this is a time to build that dynamic. Um, the CISA Writing Anthology or Literary Magazine is something that the students do. So every year, um, from volunteers in the department, student volunteers, they will request submissions, they'll accept submissions, they'll edit them, they'll do the layout. They will essentially produce a literary magazine. They will learn how to produce a literary anthology. Of course, they'll be doing with one of the instructors who has experience doing this sort of thing. So it's not just a collection of writing from the entire month. It's something that is made by the students of the department. It's a class on how to make a literary anthology, which is a super handy thing to learn.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Say. So let's talk about the application process for applying to the writing program. So there are a couple of assignments. The first is writing assignment A. You're going to write a short reflective piece that addresses the following. What role does writing play in your life? Why do you write? And what kind of writing excites you most? What are some pieces of writing that have inspired you? And what are your favorite forms of writing and why? And the limit of this is 500 words, double spaced. In this writing assignment, Zay, can you tell us a little bit about what you're looking for in these in the responses to these prompts?
Yeah, sorry, I'm smiling as one of the students in the photo here. She wrote this amazing piece where she used the language one might use in a Twitter post or a text. Like it was really free of grammar,
Mm,
and it used punctuation and emojis in a very artful and deep way that communicated a great deal of her inner life in a way that really moved me and the entire class. Um, and it's a wonderful coincidence because I think one of the ways that gets people kind of caught up, particularly in writing applications, is the formality of language.
mm,
And it's something that it can be a barrier of entry. Like, do I have to write perfect, complete sentences? Am I writing a 5-paragraph essay? I ended the opening sentence with a preposition. Will the paper explode? Um, and even in this first short reflective piece, which is essentially a prose memoir piece or maybe an essay of exploration, I don't care about grammar in this context, in the context of the application. I don't care about formality. I don't care about whether or not you're writing something that would work as an essay in the application to college or in your English class. What we want as a faculty is to hear your voice, however you speak, however you write. So for this, it really is what role does writing play in your life? And it's really different for different writers. Some people come to writing through speech, through spoken word, through song, through conversation. And that's their entry into the world of language. For some people, it's more formal. You know, for some people, they read Virginia Woolf in class, and they're like, "Oh my God, the way this person uses language, I'm losing my mind. It's amazing." Or Melville or Steinbeck or Toni Morrison or whoever that's a little more formalized as good writing. But that isn't what we want. I want to know what role writing plays in your life. Do you wake up and write? Is writing a way you find your feelings? Is writing a way you think through things? Is writing a way you create characters who you have conversations with, and that's part of the way you relate to yourself? Um, why do you write and what kind of writing excites you most? And again, do not censor this. If the kind of writing that excites you the most is the 20-part text that your best friend sent you describing a nightmare they had while camping, that's awesome. I would like to read it. um, and why do you write is very similar to that. Why you write doesn't need to be because I want to write the great American novel. It can be that. Um, Many writers write to manage emotion, and that is a excellent place to start. And if that's what it is for you, then that's what it is for you. And in fact, it means you have a particular relationship to language that is a very writerly relationship to language. What are some pieces of writing that have inspired you? Again, whatever it is. And all pieces of media are writing. So if it's that 100 volume anime, then that's what it is. If it's a comic book, if it's a novel, if it's spoken word that your friend spits on stage somewhere, whatever the piece of writing is that inspires you, I'm interested in it because it inspires you, not because it has some formal or special meaning to anybody else. What are your favorite forms of writing? If it is in fact Moby Dick, then that's awesome. I love Moby Dick. If it is in fact Death Note, then that's great. I love Death Note. But whatever it is, we want to know. Writing assignment A is about being honest and forthright and trying not to hold on to any sort of external ideas of what a writer should be, what good writing is, or any of those things. This is about being frank uh, on the page.
Well put. Writing assignment B. This is going to be in 2 slides. So you're going to choose only one of the following prompts. First 2 are on this slide. Second 2 are on the other slide. Zay, I'll ask for your comments once we get to the other slide. So the first one is prose fiction. Write a short story in any genre about a character who is certain about who they are, discovering something new about themselves, and then the consequences of that discovery. That's the first prompt. Second, dramatic writing. Write a 2-person scene in a play, a screenplay, or comic book format in which one character tries to get something from another character. That's the second. Spoken word poetry. Record a performance of a spoken word piece that responds to the question, what does it mean to be brave? And then the final prompt, poetry. Write a poem that is an act of forgiveness. So choose only one of the following 4. Zay, anything to add about these?
I think, well, to carry on with the theme, of these 4, really do pick the one that calls to you the most, you know? Um, we will not put more weight on the choice, whether it's poetry, spoken word poetry, pardon me, dramatic writing or fiction. It doesn't matter. Whatever draws you in the most. And the thing that's most important is that this is an original composition. Later in the application, there are places where you can bring stuff you've already written. But for this, it needs to be an original composition. And this is so we can see a little bit of what happens on an initial exploration for you and a response. So we're seeing many different people responding to the same prompt. Um, and yeah, other than that, I would say, yeah, just go for it. And again, please do not worry too much about spelling, about grammar, about being polite, about being tidy. Wherever your own writing voice takes you is where it takes you. If you are someone who really enjoys wonderfully constructed sentences in wonderfully constructed paragraphs, that is awesome. If you want to write a 3-page long sentence and that is your piece of prose fiction, great. However you approach it is however you approach it.
And I have a question for you, Zay. So you've put some limitations on like the quantity of the piece. So one question that we get asked sometimes is like, oh, if it's 705 words, does that automatically count me out? Or are you looking to like, yeah, try to get as close to that limit as possible? Or are you like, hey, this is a hard limit. 2 minutes, that's it, not 201.
I mean, look, nobody's going to narc you out, okay? Um, if it's a little over, that's okay. Um, if you roll in with a poem that is 10 pages long, um, I don't know. It's just a little mean. Like we get a lot of applications. We get a lot of applications. And the faculty and myself, we read all of them. We don't read half of one and then set it aside. We read all of them and we discuss them. That's something that we owe the people who are applying. And I feel like something that those who are applying owe their fellow writers is to not take too big of a chunk. So if you submit a novel and we take the time to read the novel, it's giving a squeeze to everybody else. So I would just say, be kind and thoughtful and know that we are people who are taking the time and care to really read these. So yeah, 705 words or 2 minutes and 30 seconds, whatever. If it gets really, really, really over, it's not a matter of like the rule of the law or we're going to take you to county courthouse. It's a matter of we read a lot of these and we give true care to every single one.
Thank you. Writing assignment C. This is a writing sample. Share a piece you wrote on your own. This word can be fiction. It can be dramatic writing, play, screenplay, comic book. It can be spoken word poetry or poetry in the limit. 4 pages, double space for prose, single space for poetry, or screenplay/play format. Anything that you have to add on this?
So this is where you bring what you've worked on a lot. And again, like how I would say if you're looking at like 3 different pieces and you're thinking, well, I think these CSSA people would really like this. Or I have a friend who went to CSSA and they told me that Zay really likes this kind of writing. Or you're looking at that other thing that is the thing that you are really proud of. The thing that like when you think about it or you read it, you feel like you are singing, or maybe even something that you're a little scared to share. That's what to share. That's what to send us. Um, that's what to send us.
Love that. I echo that statement of sharing something that really shows who you are rather than what you think someone wants to see. This CSIS community.
Absolutely.
You're joining a community, and we want these community members to not only want to be here, but to, add to this community. All right. And then finally, for returning students, if you are returning in the writing program, or if you are from another program and you want to return, or you want to return and try out the writing program, please submit a 1-page essay, 500 words or less, stating your reasons for wishing to return to CSSA, explain your learning objectives for the second summer, and all assignments must be new and show your growth since you attended CSSA in a previous year. Zay, you are not only a CSSA alum, but you are a returning CSSA alum. You had multiple CSSA experiences. So do you have anything to share from that returning student perspective?
Yeah, I will say the writing really does need to show growth. almost everyone who comes to the program shows growth between the beginning and the end of the program. What we need to see is that you've continued to work, and that you've continued to grow as a writer. That really is the key to it. Um, and it doesn't necessarily mean that like the direction that you were going in when you left CSSSA is the direction that we expect or want you to go in. Whatever direction you're going in, go in that direction. Um, but we do need to see something, we do need to see growth. The other thing I'll say about returning is, at least in the writing department, the students that we accept back are not necessarily the ones who the rest of the department might say, oh, they were the best writer. I do not like using that language. Um, I say it only because we bring back students who not only have shown growth, but who we see there is a continued capacity to grow and could still get stuff out of the program. Because there comes a point where uh, what we offer in the CISA writing department is something that writers outgrow of necessity. We are not the end all be all. No mentor or class or educational program or artistic community that you are ever part of is not something you will outgrow almost all of those. And so some students simply outgrow the program and they don't get accepted back and they worry that it's because there's something wrong with their writing or something's gone awry. And it is not that. Something has gone very, very, very wry, very right. So what we're looking for are students who have shown growth, who we still think can get something out of the program. And this is the third key, someone who can bring leadership. I almost don't want to use the word leadership because it makes it seem like we expect you to, I don't know, like be the captain or something. It's more like students who can help shepherd new students through those 4 weeks, which can be complicated and they can be trying and they can cause a lot of self-doubt at times. And returning students who have the ability to communicate, even just one-on-one, not necessarily as a group, but communicate one-on-one, talk about their experience, um, and have a sort of point of view about the program. Again, those are the sorts of students who that's sort of the third component that we look at in terms of returning students.
Yeah, I would agree. Returners are leaders in the community because they show that it's possible to get through CISA, one, and that this is an experience that changed them and that they, want to take part in again. It's a privileged role to be able to return to CISA because the bulk of our population are new and we want to keep those spaces for students who are experiencing it for the first time. But we do love to have returners in the community to show that it is possible and to, have a really wonderful, kind of effect on the population. And like Zay said, kind of shepherd along those who, you know, have this experience and get overwhelmed because for some of you, this is your first time living and working and doing your art away from home, and we don't take that lightly. That's a big deal, especially in a post-pandemic landscape, certainly. So that's it for our slide presentation. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to pin or spotlight Zay and then we're going to dig into some of these questions. So
I want to say one more thing.
please.
Wow, I think I realized my hair has these weird curly things going on. Um, uh, Sometimes a point of tension is, do we accept like genre stuff? Like, is it okay to write science fiction or fantasy or, I don't know, pulpy crime stories if that's what you're into? The answer is yes. Um, Everything, like autobiographical stuff, memoir stuff, really, really out there science fiction, not so out there science fiction, high fantasy, low fantasy, weird fantasy, like I mean, I personally like all of that stuff. And we have there five or six other instructors, and we have a very broad range of taste. I try to hire or bring in instructors who are really different from each other. So yeah, so if you're a genre person, that's great. If you're a literary fiction person, that's great. It's all on the table.
Amazing. All right, I'm going to dig into some of these questions I've received. What is the acceptance rate for the writing program? Not sure if you know that offhand, Zay, do you?
I actually don't know it offhand. Also, the number of students we accept remains the same, or at least it has for the past number of years. But the number of applications we take in changes. Um, like if I can do bad math, I imagine that last year, like 25% of applicants got in, maybe 30%, maybe something like that.
And how many students are in the program in general?
About anywhere from 65 to 70.
Wonderful. And then tacked onto this question is, in admitted students, is the ratio of male to female 1 to 1, kind of like gender breakdowns.
Oh,
I'm not sure if you know that or
I don't know the exact numbers. I can tell you we in the writing department at CSSSA, we generally have a whole lot of ladies and very few dudes, and a lot of folks who have a lot of we have non-binary folks, trans men, trans women. But in terms of uh, generally, it's a lot of women and very few men.
nice. Thanks, Zay. Is it better to submit a different genre of writing for B and C? Example, instead of 2 poems, 1 poem and 1 prose piece.
Uh, I would say do what you're drawn to.
Hmm.
Do what you're drawn to. Like if poetry is your thing, and you do poetry for the first for the do one of these only, and then you do your own work, and that's poetry also, that is a-okay. Zero demerits for that. One of the handy things about CISA is that you will both have the ability to choose and also be forced to um, explore other domains of writing. So if you're primarily a fiction person, you will, in all likelihood, be working on some poetry at some point. If you are a screenplay writing person, you will at some point be writing prose fiction. And what's neat is that often students come into the program really, really being locked into, like, I write, um, I want to write comic books. I want to write uh, uh, memoir comic books, right? And then after about a week, having interacted with a poetry instructor, they're like, "Oh wow, I really feel ignited by this poetry thing," and they leave poets, and that's a-okay. But yeah, if everything you submit is poetry or everything you submit is prose fiction, that is a-okay. Again, I would say whatever shows who you are, whatever you're drawn to, um, whatever you want to show us.
Wonderful. There are a couple elective questions. First one is, what are some more examples of electives that the writing program offers?
Um, let's see. Last year, I'm not going to remember the exact titles of them. We're writers, so we always come up with snazzy titles for stuff. Um, there was a memoir course that was specifically about family. So the students wrote pieces that involved their family, the history of their family, family stories, family memories. That class was taught by a writer named Rosa Bashir Gonzalez, and she worked very, very hard to make sure that there was sort of a closed container in the classroom. So she really took care of students as they were exploring this material. Meg Shavanok taught a class on poetry and time. So it was an exploration of time through language. It was really, really lovely and produced some very erudite and interesting poems. Chi Choi did an elective on, I don't want to mess up his title because it was so cool, but it was something along the lines of uh, poems about the worst places I've ever been. And so he sort of worked to help students find beauty in awful places, places where there were like disturbing and weird and scary and sometimes traumatic memories and experiences. And out of that came astonishing work. That group got really tight. Um, and uh, Another prose instructor taught a class. I forget what he called it, but it was a prose class, prose fiction class. And his approach was from the sentence. So the idea was you start with the sentence and you use that to build out and out and out until you have the shape of a story. Whereas my storytelling class was more like going from the idea, like what's your big wild idea? What's the right form? Now let's work on it.
Mm.
And then we had a screenplay writing class, like a very um, rigorous and specific approach to writing screenplays that could work in this world, in a contemporary world, both commercially and artistically.
Mm.
Um, let's see, in the past, I used to teach a class called Memoir to Metaphor, where we'd start writing memoir, and then we would turn the memoir memories. I'm a writer,
Great.
into metaphors, and then use those metaphors to create usually fantasy or science fiction stories.
Mm.
Um, a woman who used to teach here named Julia, she used to teach a class called Poem of Origin, and it was a poetry cycle that sort of told the story of who you are.
Mm.
So those are other examples. I do not know what they'll come up with, what this faculty will come up with this summer. But what I do encourage is that there will be at least one dramatic writing option, two prose fiction options, because those are often popular. Wow, I'm making balloons with my hand. Um, and also some sort of memoir or creative nonfiction available.
And how competitive is it to get into your first choice elective?
Almost everyone gets their first choice. Um, and I like I cannot remember a time when almost everyone gets their first choice, and if you don't get your first choice, you get your second choice.
Mm. Right. I have another message that says, is it mandatory to live on campus? I can answer this one. Yes, it is mandatory. We provide housing for all of our students. You stay in the dorms, you have your meals in the main building, in the cafeteria, everything is covered for you. So you do have to stay on campus and there will be a space for you. You have
Um,
another, oh, go ahead.
I'm can I can I'm gonna tell a terrible secret about CISA. And that secret is this. For most students who go to CISA, it's a sort of a transformative experience about your relationship between yourself and your art, yourself as an artist, yourself and other artists. And that comes only about half from the classroom. Like what happens in the classroom is important. What happens outside the classroom, equally important. Because what happens outside the classroom is that every year, the students, not the faculty, not Jessica, not me, not anybody, the students create this artistic community that exists for 4 weeks and then goes away. And being on campus, being separate from family, from friends, from your environment, which for some students, it's like, yeah, get me out of here. And for other students, it's very difficult. And I was very homesick. I was very shy, very homesick the first time I went to CISA. Um, and yet it's where a lot of the value comes from and a lot of learning what it is to be an artist among other artists who see you as an artist. And it's a new experience for many CISA students.
Well put. There's another question that is, where would you submit the one-page essay for returning students? I already submitted my application and I never saw a spot to upload the file. Will I be automatically rejected because of it? No, definitely not. I'm going to put an email in the chat, comments@cesa.ca.gov, email them and say, oh, I'm a returning student. I forgot to upload this one thing. Can you add it to my application? Should get y'all fixed up. So I'm putting that in the chat. Okay, let's see. Can the samples be a combination of multiple types of writing? Can it be a journal entry? Like,
Um, for for the um, for the prompts that you respond to the prompt and have it be new. Um, for the submission of your own previous writing, yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, memoir and journaling is, I don't even want to use the word legitimate because, like, who the hell am I to say that? But it is for sure a part of the writing world.
are there any certain do's and do not do's when applying? Do's and don'ts?
Yeah, do be yourself
Mm,
and don't spend a lot of time on trying to figure out what it is we want.
mm, love it. Is there anything that you're not allowed to write about in the application, sensitive material, stuff like that?
Once you're in the program, we keep a pretty solid container in terms of the work that goes on in the classroom. For the application, there's a way in which the answer is no, write about anything you want to write about.
Mm.
And there's another way in which, sorry, I went to this idea of a trigger warning.
Mm.
And, especially among like old fogey like Gen Xers and boomers, I always get kind of bent out of shape about this idea of trigger warnings. But really what it's there to do is to take care of your reader. And I guess I would say that anything that you put in the application, actually, here's a better way to put it. There are certain things that if you write about them, even in the container, in the classroom at CSSSA, I am required to report it. I bet you can imagine what sort of things those are. If that sort of thing shows up in an application, it's going to give us some pause. Not because we don't want to write, there's anything you shouldn't write about, but because we would question the prudence of the applicant.
Hmm. Thank you. We have another question here that asks, who is this program not for? You mentioned in the beginning about some people
It's a good
outgrowing the
question.
program. I know, great
That's a
question.
really good question. Who is this program not for? The this program is not for one of the things we talk about initially is that the instructors in the writing department, we can help you grow as a writer. But we can only do that if you can push yourself as far as you can go. If you can't push yourself as far as you can go, then we don't know where the next stage of growth needs to be. So aside from like the obvious, like don't go to the program if you're not really into writing.
Mm,
Like, only because, like, why? Like, every once in a very long while, there seems to be a student who's kind of there to like pad their college application.
mm,
And I would say, don't go if it's to pad a college application. Uh, don't go if you're not really into writing, and don't go if you don't think that you can, either on your own or with the gentle encouragement of a supportive group of writers, go as far as you can go
mm.
so that we can help you go further.
Well said. Would you rather someone submit a piece that they think is very well written and that they're very proud of, or a piece that they think is less well written, but that might show you better of, a better picture of who they are?
You know, the sticky part of that is the well-written part. Because, like, what does that mean exactly? What we're looking for is a kind of spark that can shine through language, because that's the beginning of voice. And that spark can shine through anything. Someone earlier asked if they can submit journal entry. And if you've read journal entries of writers that you love, you know that that spark can shine through, even if they're writing about how very, very dry their eggs were that morning. To me, I think the answer to that question, I think the jerky answer to that question is they say something like, I think you probably already know which one you want to submit.
Mm.
Um, but I think that's a jerky answer. So I think the answer I will give is, I don't know, whichever one you really want to submit. I'm gonna guess that you probably don't necessarily know what all 7 instructors in the writing program think is good writing.
Mm.
So I would say go with the thing that makes you feel like you're singing in a way that people can hear the best.
Beautiful. Couple of nuts and bolts questions. I'm just gonna kind of blow through really quickly, and then we'll get back into more writing specific ones. Um, Housing is not necessarily based on your department. When you get in, you'll be given a housing form, and you can state your preferences. Yeah, I want to live with all writers. I don't want to live with any actors. I'm a person that stays up late. So that's where you give all your preferences. If you know a friend who's going, you two can request to live with each other. So that's when you handle all of that. You do have roommates. It's going to be 2 to 3 in a room, depending on how big the room is. And each room shares a bathroom. So you'll have suite mates. You'll have to figure out a shower schedule. It's all very good grown-up stuff. Good stuff for you to learn. The application is due on February 29th at 6 p.m. And then, yes, this department specific info session will be uploaded to our YouTube channel for anyone who's missed it, or if you came late and wanted to see the beginning of it, it should be up in the afternoon tomorrow. So now I'm going to dive back into some application related questions. For your reflective piece, does it have to be roughly like an essay, or can it have something else that answers the question from the prompt? Still in the form of writing, just not an essay.
Yeah, it doesn't need to feel like an essay. I mean, it could feel more like a journal entry. It could feel like an immediate exploration of the answers to the questions. It definitely doesn't need to be like introductory paragraph, 3 supports, closing paragraph. In fact, please don't do that. Please don't do that to me.
Our students
Unless
random
you want to, unless that's your deal.
do
But
what you
no.
Are students randomly called on to read aloud in the colloquium?
It's not random. It is not random. Um, Often we work to we work to make it so that everyone reads at least once. Um, and usually that happens. In the colloquium, students read pieces that were written in class for the course over the course of the week. So the colloquium happens on Saturday. On Friday, each instructor will say, this person's reading this piece, this person's reading that piece, this person's reading that piece. And it's about showing a broad variety of reactions to a particular piece. Um, so it's not random, but students are chosen. Um, there are no open mics that the department holds, but often in the year, students organize their own open mics. Pardon me, the CSA itself, like the sort of the rec director sometimes holds open mics. I mean, there was a there were some very, very excellent open mics last year. Yeah.
Another kind of nuts and bolts question. If applying to more than one program, do you submit an application or more than one application? The answer is yes. You can apply to all 7 disciplines, but you will need to fill out an application for each discipline that you apply for. Oh, and the work excerpt, part of the application, is there a language restraint? Do you have any kind of like foul language barrier? Don't drop it.
No, no. In fact, just imagine what I might have said if this was not being recorded and put on the CISA website.
Hey, is there a lot of free time apart from meals for students to bond outside of the classroom?
So in the writing department, there are classes. The schedule last year, if I remember correctly, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, there were classes from 9 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. with like an hour and a half or an hour long break for lunch. Um, After that time, there was there were either guest writers who came to speak, or there were office hours. So individual students can come and work one-on-one with individual instructors. And if you weren't doing office hours, then it was a free time to write in particular locations on campus. And then at 5 o'clock, Monday through Friday, you're not in class. There's a lot of work, so sometimes there's writing that's done after hours, or more often there's dinner and then hanging out until 10 p.m. and then writing until 1 a.m. if is my understanding of how it often works for the faculty too.
Very true. And for the one-on-one office hours, will faculty help edit a student's work?
Well, that's the whole thing.
Right.
Um, Although I guess the word edit is sort of flexible. Like there are a lot of different ways to approach revision. Like people tend to use the word revision, and there are a lot of different kinds of revising. Um, but if what you're asking is, will at some point with a particular piece, an instructor go line by line and talk through everything in a piece with the student? Absolutely. Um, Yes, absolutely. That'll happen in class, out of class. There are some students with particular gusto who will sign up for office hours as often as they can and bring work they've written in class outside of class. We have a lot of availability for what it is you need, not just in terms of responding to what's happening in class, but if you're working on stuff outside of class.
Great. And a couple other nuts and bolts questions I can answer pretty quickly. If rooming arrangements don't work out, are we allowed to move and change rooms? Absolutely. This is just something that you need to be in communication with your RA, resident assistant, about if there's ever a problem. And then are there activities after hours or on weekends that help those of us who are shy and perhaps antisocial feel more, participants feel more comfortable? Yes, there's a lot of different recreational activities that you can take part in. There are lots of places to hang out, quiet corners to sit in. But you can also find that you come to CSSA and you're not very social, and then you surprise yourself and everybody else, and you are the most social. You know, will make a lot of friends in this program, and you'll find that, you know, people gravitate towards one another. And yeah, maybe you're in a group that's like way more extroverted. Maybe you're in a group that's introverted, and all you guys do is sit on the hill and write. You know, you will find your people here at CSSA, and there'll be lots.
My first year at CISA, I was 15 years old, really shy and really shy. And there were so few students at CISA back then, and it was at a different campus, that I had a single room. And I didn't talk to anyone outside of class for the first week. And I was pretty sure I would never talk to any other human. And then, I don't know, like getting to know people in class, listening to their writing, other people responding to my own writing, eating in the dining hall. Eventually the I came to be very close to far more people than I ever expected. And by that I mean five, but there were 5,000 people.
What is the average number of pieces created per day for a student?
95. Um,
Nice.
uh, hmm. It varies really, really widely. There's in-class writing, there's out-of-class writing. In the past, I've tended to have one assignment per class. Um, it varies a lot. It varies a lot. And it also depends on what you're working on. Like if you're in a screenplay class, um, you'll be working on a long form piece, you know, like something that's 90 to 110 pages. Um, so, you know, you will not be writing 4 screenplays a day. Whereas if you're in a poetry class, especially with shorter poetry, I mean, you could write 2 poems in class and then go home and write another poem. And it varies wildly.
Great. So we're getting towards the end here. We have about 5 minutes left. There's a few more questions. And if we didn't get to your question, go ahead and email comments@cisa.ca.gov. Those burning questions. Kind of on the vein of homework, how much homework are they looking at per day or over the weekend? And what type of like homework or out of class assignments will they have?
Again, it varies wildly. Um, you'll never have more than 2 classes a day. Um, and and there are only four, and of those 2 class days, there are only 4 of them. So on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you have 2 classes a day, and on what happens on Wednesdays is doesn't involve a take-home assignment usually. Well, ever. Well, hardly ever. Um, so you could have as many as, I don't know, 2 assignments in an evening, but um, this is what I'll say. You're going to write a lot.
Mhm.
You're going to write a lot. And we want to push you a little bit to build your capacity to write. Um, and we take care to be thoughtful and to pay attention. We see all the writers in the class and we see where they are and we see what they're doing. And if they're having difficulty. So I'm going to say you're going to write a lot. And should you begin to feel overwhelmed, then we can work on that.
The name of the game is communication. You know, this is your chance to live like a creative college student while you're still in high school, you know. So that means independence, that means speaking up for yourself, that means communicating when something is going on. And, you know, of course, we're going to keep you safe. We're going to keep you well nourished. And we have counselors on staff for you. If you're feeling super homesick, feeling depressed, you need to talk to somebody, we have those resources available for you. You just gotta, you know, ask for them or be available for us to go like, hey, I wanna talk to the counselor. They're right here. Come on down. Um, can the same pieces be used in multiple different applications. I can answer this. So if you are applying for, say, writing and visual arts, and you wanted to do comic book, submission in writing, can you also use that same example in visual arts? I would say as long as it fits within the criteria for both, the chairs won't necessarily know or um, talk to each other about, oh, this person applied here. Well, they applied here. They'll only know once you've gotten into both and they have to fight over you, basically. So you are welcome as long as it fits the criteria of what they're asking for. You can submit, a piece for both. But you have to make sure you really pay attention to those application requirements and make sure it fits. When will you get back to us after we submit our application? The CSSSA team reviews your application in the month of March, and then notifications will go out in late April, early May. And then I think we have time for about one more. Do you recommend starting drafts of pieces you want to work on? Example, novel manuscripts before coming to the program?
I would say do not do that. I would say do not do that. First of all, there may not be a novel writing elective. And there definitely won't be a novel writing introductory fiction class. And in all likelihood, you'll be asked to create original work in your class to work on for like a host of reasons. That said, office hours are the exact right place for that. So like if you have a novel you're working on, it might be a bit of a tall order, but if you have a novel you're working on, or stories or poems or a screenplay or a comic book or anything, then office hours are the right place for that, much more than a class.
And will students be expected to bring a device or a laptop?
So if you have a laptop, please bring it. If you don't, that is a-okay. We have a number of computers that are not laptops, but are in fact desktops. But we have a bunch of them. There's a place called Tatum, which is this during the year at CalArts, it's a cafe, but during CSSSA time, it is just for the writers. And in that space are computers and two printers, which always work perfectly. And that is a place where you can compose, transcribe, print stuff, etc. But yeah, if you have access to a laptop, definitely bring it.
Wonderful. It is now 7 p.m. We're going to have to close out this info session. Thank you so much, Zay, for joining us and answering all these wonderful questions. Thank you to everyone who did join us, ask these incredible questions. I'm so impressed with the amount of questions these budding writers have asked. Once again, this will be up on YouTube, and please apply, and we hope to see you at CSSSA this summer. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Zay, again.
Thank you.
Can you get the balloons going? How do you do that? It's incredible.